horrific things, the worst things I've ever seen as a journalist. We saw a lot of blood, a lot of shattered glass. I still can't get the image of a woman who was clearly not breathing with her eyes open, staring straight up at the sky.
David, this is, all of us who've been overseas in war zones, these injuries are going to be absolutely consistent with the urban explosions we've seen in Baghdad, in Kabul, and certainly this methodology, an initial explosion and a secondary, is familiar to all those who fought wars overseas. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's definitely frightening. At first we were stunned by the explosion, weren't sure what was happening. A lot of people were thinking, as often is the case with explosions, that it was like a firework, perhaps a celebratory gun salute for the finishing runners. And the contrast is really jarring, because you had this moment of great bliss and celebration of runners just making it across the distance of the marathon, and then suddenly everything changed.
You're not the first person to say, and it's completely understandable, like a starting cannon in a sailboat race, that this was your initial. Who's thinking, terrorism at the finish line of the Boston Marathon, for goodness sake, that it was a planned outburst of some sort?
I think as soon as I heard, and anyone else who's in the vicinity heard the second explosion, we knew immediately, like when we saw the second plane hit the second tower of the World Trade Center, we knew immediately that this was premeditated, that this was a terrorist attack.
Yeah, that exact same thing occurred to me, that when one thing happens, it could be a gas line, it could be a quote-unquote natural occurrence in a big city. When the second one happens 20 seconds later, it's a good bit likely that this is an attack. David Abel, thank you very much. I'm sorry for what you've been through. Thank you very much for calmly reporting on it for us on live television. Mike Capos is another eyewitness who was there. Mike, what did you see?
Hi, Brian. I was actually at a restaurant called Town at the top level with a lot of windows, about 100 yards from the finish line. Kind of felt the first explosion. Everyone was a little rattled. And the second explosion happened, and from the windows, literally just saw a sea of people sprinting away from where it happened. Just a complete mob scene running in the other direction.
Mike, are you a Bostonian?
I've lived in Boston for about 6 years, originally from Rhode Island.
I was thinking today about the Ben Affleck movie, The Town, and how the plot line to a lot of people might have been outlandish. They were going to rob Fenway Park, and kind of the most unbelievable plot line you can imagine in Boston. Except for this today, no one would believe explosions at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. It's hard to describe the kind of citywide party atmosphere one day a year in that city.
Yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, I've celebrated the marathon for the last, 6 years here, and just the sheer panic in people's faces. I'm currently at a friend, Corey Griffin's condo. I mean, we've taken in people from abroad. People from London are here, just giving them a place to charge their phones and make calls. We have people from California and Chicago, and it's very chaotic and frankly very scary.
And Mike, also, it's hard to overestimate the kind of number of people per runner who are in town. If you've been training in Oklahoma City, if that's where you live, to come run the Boston Marathon, your support group is probably with you on the trip, and you've saved up for airfare and a hotel room or two, and this is such a big day. All those people from all different countries are crowded into the Boston metropolitan area today.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that are from all over the place that are here today, and you know, a lot of people are asking where to go, and you know, going back to your hotel doesn't seem to be the safest place. I mean, but that's where we're telling everyone to go. Go back home, go back to your hotel, or get out of the city. But I mean, it's a scary place right now.
And at the same time, avoid crowds, which is not easy to do on Marathon Day, Patriots Day in Boston. Mike Capos, thank you very much for being with us. Thanks to all our eyewitnesses who have so calmly described this horrible thing that will leave so many people who just were in the vicinity in shock as a result. Just to update you on the latest figures, just into us from the Boston Globe, more than 100 people have been treated. And thankfully, that also can be injuries that in the scope of things today have to be called quite minor. If you were in that vicinity in the blast shield area and escaped with, you know, a piece of shrapnel, given how fiendish and awful this is, I suppose you should be considered among the lucky. This is Boston General, I think, the ER entrance. And you see people running around with those foil blankets to retain the body heat for marathon finishers. We're all very familiar with, having seen them on TV. Patients are coming in wrapped in them as blankets. But again, this happened next to what we heard the WHDH reporter describe as the biggest emergency room in Boston on this day every year. It's set up to give emergency triage assistance to marathon runners. This again is the video from the Boston Globe website. We just spoke to the photographer who took it. And you have the first explosion, and then to the left, seconds later, you hear the dull roar of the second explosion. All of it taking place at the finish line. As former Boston Police Commissioner Bill Bratton pointed out correctly, at least it didn't happen at the very moment of finish, as you would have even more people crowded in there. We haven't done this in a while. Let's listen into our coverage over these pictures on WHDH, our NBC station, as they search for more explosives in Boston.
To detonate that with a controlled blast. But this is what they've been doing. And in fact, you know, a lot of our crews out there, Janet Wu saw a number of officers and investigators sort of going up and down the streets looking for what else might be out there.
We'll stay on top of this for now. We mentioned earlier that our colleague Stephen Cooper he always runs the marathon, and nothing different this year. He ran it again.
Runners that sort of had come through Kenmore Square and were heading under the Mass Ave Bridge to make that turn onto Hereford and then down to Boylston. It was just sort of...
The TD Garden canceled for 7 o'clock against the Ottawa Senators. They will reschedule that as the city and authorities from the FBI to the ATF to the...
We seem to have had our audio lines crossed as this reporter for our NBC station was recounting as far as we can tell, around the 4:09 mark. The finishers who had just gotten across will get their 4:09 certificates. But before that, you have miles of runners, thousands of runners yet to cross the finish line. And you can almost start to see the makings of the backup if you look down Boylston. Let's go to Chuck Todd at the White House. And Chuck, we've been talking to you mostly about the
planning art come from. All you have to do is go back to the latest issue of Inspire magazine, which is the magazine published by Al-Qaeda of the Arabian Peninsula. And what they were calling for in that issue was, rather than rely on the front office of a terrorist organization, they were inspiring, if you will, true to their name, followers around the globe, but particularly in the United States, to learn the recipes for explosives from the magazine, learn the elements of the plot, and to target things on their own. When we talk to Bob Orr and we hear there were no intelligence reports of a heightened threat, There were no specific